as well. Hello.
Hi. This is going to be edited. Anyway,
Off
hello,
to
everyone.
you.
Hello, everyone. We are here because you asked us a lot of questions during our Open Science Symposium this morning, and we want to answer to some of the most important ones that we found in your app and in your questions. And honestly, it was very difficult to choose a couple of them for each of our speakers and a couple of them to answer together, but we try to do our best. And just know that if you're not answering to any question of yours that you think are very important, well, I invite you to write to all of these beautiful people that you see on screen and just reach out to them, and they will definitely answer to you, right?
Yes.
Great.
We do it publicly in a way that I can't escape.
All right, so let's start with some questions for each one of you. And I would say, let's start with the one that was not with us today, Steph. Hey.
Hey, all.
All right.
There's going to be a bit of a lag, but I'm excited. Yeah.
All right. Steph, what do you think is the biggest threat to an early career researcher? What do they need to protect themselves from when they do open science?
So something I see sometimes in the open science community is that it can be a bit of a slippery slope. You get involved in this community, there's a lot that needs to be done. There's a lot of work that goes across a lot of members of the community, but what we see is generally there are a few members that end up taking on a lot of the work. And sometimes I see them finding it difficult to keep up with their own research and their own productivity. So I think in any kind of service that you do, and open science, I think is also a big form of service. You need to make sure to, make time for yourself, make time for the things that will build your career, try to marry the two things together as well. But just making sure that you're not dedicating yourself 100% to a community that sometimes you can end up doing things without recognition, especially since it's a very, social enterprise where we're all trying to pitch in together. You just need to find some balance in terms of the contributions that you're making.
I feel very seen, painfully.
Benjamin Cass, do you want to add something like very quick?
No, I think that's a great thing. Like, so often we focus on the benefits of this work, and there are massive benefits, but you're right. It's easy in the system of academia to be taken advantage of if you're enthusiastic and you've got skills. So I think it's right to be aware that that's a risk.
Okay. Thank you very much. The next question for you, Steph, and I'm going to relaunch it to Benjamin and Cass as well after, is what should we do when our supervisor, mentor, or professor is not an open scientist? And what should we do to improve the open scienciness of the environment that we have around us?
It's an excellent question. And I started to talk about it in this morning's symposium. And I think the most important thing you can do is really try to align your incentives with your supervisors. So for instance, a really big one is if you point to the fact that open publications tend to be cited more. That really aligns with most supervisors, even if they're, and especially if they're not open. Unfortunately, playing to some of those, sometimes you can, play to some of those sorts of elements that will make your supervisor feel like you're advancing your career and their career while advancing open science. Unfortunately, it can be, I think that there are a few different ways people can oppose open science. And some of them you can sort of gently push back and enforce culture change by doing things like pointing out all the ways in which you're engaging in open science, like I'm open collaborating, I'm building my network, I'm making the lab look really great. You can slowly make culture change in that way. Some people are opposed to open science kind of on principle. Maybe they don't like the group of open scientists, maybe they have a preconceived notion. I think that it can be hard to have conversations with when people have a really fixed mindset like that. But I think you can show how a lot of different elements of open science, especially in the neuroimaging community, we're in a really great space right now for embracing open science in the community. You can talk about how some of the most amazing people are embracing open science and how some of the most influential papers these days kind of build on, open science and reproducibility kinds of ideas, and just really hammer that they align with your PI's incentives.
Yeah, one of the things that PI can say when they don't like to be in open science is that, well, we had a question like that, is that it's having closed assets can bring more collaborations. It's something that you can leverage. But for me, it's actually untrue, I believe. Being open about the software, about the data, it actually brings visibility to your work, and it brings more collaboration that you would have if you don't put them open. And so I think it's really important to consider that as a visibility support thing. Open science bring people to your research instead of you being having to go to them, right? And yes, of course, sometimes you release an open data set and people are going to use it without your consent and publish about it. Well, if you're smart about it, you can even do something about that as well. And so it's just a matter of convincing them that it has more benefits than disadvantages, right? So I think the conversation is relatively easy once you align with your PI interests again.
Gus, do you want to add something?
I forgot the question. I was so pumped up for this morning. No, I'm not going to add anything. It was great. I love the incentives thing, right? That's super smart. Yeah.
All right, then let's roast you for a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, Gus. How is there seems a lot of people are interested in understanding what do you do during your job and how do you divide your time between groups and between different tasks. So the two questions that we have, and I'm going to pull together, are: how is a TIR time division decided if they are paid by the center institutes? I guess we're referring to different groups or different type of tasks. And how much of your job is promoting open science within and outside the lab? And how much is helping with analysis?
So I can only speak for how the division of time and energy goes in my group, right? And I'm sure there are other models. But the stage that we're at the moment as a community, I'm happy to help anyone who puts their hand up and emails me and says, hey, Cass, I need some help with this. So there's no formal division of my attention across different people. What I can imagine happening, though, is you get to an IT ticket type system. And I think that would be kind of sad because it's rather dehumanizing. But I don't know. I think this is one of the really interesting places where we are yet to develop this as a thing, right? So this model has been addressed in other various ways and things. So the software engineers is more established as a practice, and you can bid for software engineer time, and they bill you and track their time and stuff. So I'm whoever says hi, Cass, I'm there. Eventually, I get to them in my inbox, and it is starting to get to the point that I need to be a bit more just aware of how much time I'm giving. But it would be a shame to have to restrict, each group can only have 10 hours or something like that. If people want it, I'm here and I'm going to give it. And that is good for the cause, because if people want it, then it shows it's a valuable thing. What was the other bit? I forget.
And how much of your job is promoting open science with and outside the lab, and how much is helping with analysis?
So to be clear, I don't actually help with analysis. I will, if someone so for example, I've had a little flurry of questions about people wanting to make interactive web apps and stuff. So I'll point them to resources, I'll connect them with other people, but yeah, it's very rare that I'll actually dig into people's code. It's more about signposting. And then the inside outside bit kind of varies with the just sort of time. I know coming into this event, I knew that I was going to be doing a lot of outside networking, and that's incredibly important. But then when I get home, I'll still be trying to make sure that I'm sort of feeding all of the right places. So it's a big juggling act. And as I said, that's probably a me issue rather than.
I guess though that this question was related to the fact that today you told us that it's not just one type of TIR, right?
No, exactly.
And so it might depend also by the type of TIR you were fitting in, right?
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, there are models for handling this, and they're more developed in some areas than others.
Okay, thank you. There's another question that I want to open to the three of you, actually, but it was specifically directed to Cass. for TAR positions probably. The question is, without a defined career progression, how secure is your current position? Cass, you start.
Well, who's watching? I think my position is incredibly secure because I'm doing something no one else can do at the moment in my institution. And they recognize how valuable it is.
Right.
So internally, well, I mean, assuming that funding arrives, right? And it does. And also the fact that our center, when open science was written in as a big part of it, it's welcome funded and they love open science. So there is a mandate for the work that I do. There's also, as a community manager, there's growing recognition of that as being a professional skill, and there's a demand for that. Like we've been talking to the BIDS community people, the data lab community people. So there's so many opportunities. So I think if this is work you're interested in, it's a great time to jump on that early. But it's still academia. I'm still on fixed term contracts. It's how secure is anyone's job, really?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a growth market.
Mm-hmm. I think that the question was stemming also from the fact that there's a clear path in academia if you want to become a PI.
Yeah.
But there's not a clear path to become a TAR.
So what isn't secure is my progression.
Right.
So I'm going through grading procedures. I'm constantly playing this game, but there is support for my progression, but there's not the structure for it. So that people want to be able to develop, but I'm just on my thing. But it's a bit of a battle.
Mm-hmm. Ben, you're in a more defined career progression.
Yeah.
How secure do you find yourself?
Well, as a tenure track PI, I don't have tenure yet. I guess there is a little bit of insecurity, but in my case, there is not a lot. In Canada, there's much less pressure than in the US, for example, and I'm speaking really about Canada. So I don't feel a lot of pressure on that. Maybe if we talk about progress, there is a clear path to get into a PI position. But then after that, once you are PI and once you start your lab, it's unclear. I mean, there is a clear path usually in institution for salaries and progress in terms of how you advance in terms of assistant professor, and then you get tenure and then etc. And there are some expectations, but they're relatively broad, and you make your own career, and that gives me a little bit of insecurity because you can do whatever you want. It's yourself that decides the way you want to build a lab, if you want to go open or not, how many students you want, how many, I would say, funding you want to secure. And that's part of the insecurity that we feel. And it has a lot of pressure because of that. Mm-hmm. How much pressure you get and brings insecurity, and well, there is always the question of, am I doing the right job? Mm-hmm. How secure am I with this job as well? So I always feel that once you are a PI, you're a PI for life. But you should probably ask the question of, well, is that true, right? Of course, when you start and you're motivated and it's all great, you start going to that direction. But I think we should always ask the question of where I want to be as a PI in 10 years and how do I get there and how secure I am of getting there.
Right. Thank you for this answer. Stephanie, what is your career path that you envision for yourself, and how do you feel you will have security in that career path?
So I'm currently open to a lot of different things right now. I'm a postdoc, and I'm a postdoc in the midst of what really feels like a great resignation in academia for postdocs. A lot of postdocs are leaving for industry. But I am interested in pursuing an academic tenure track position, or perhaps like a governmental position that's similar, as long as I'm able to make that work. Right now, postdocs are experiencing a lot of uncertainty. There are very few jobs. In terms of whether I feel like I have more or less uncertainty than the average postdoc because I do open science work, I will say I applied for a K99R00. I'm waiting to hear, should be any day now. And that K99R00 is about basically a methodology that should help serve the field. And I think that that's very much in the spirit of open science. And I think that that's the sort of thing that would facilitate a transition. And just the fact that something like that is being considered, which I don't think is really something that a lot of funding agencies would consider in, the recent past. So maybe add support to the fact that you could have a little bit more security than you would in the past doing like a sort of open science, data science oriented role. I think it's still really tricky to sort of carve out your own path as a data scientist or an open scientist, rather than have kind of like a really specific, let's say, research program that doesn't necessarily touch on open science or data science or service to the community.
Okay, thank you very much to the three of you. Ben, we're going to roast you for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
So today you told us that you do a lot of work in basically software development. You have a toolbox, you have a team that developed that toolbox that is paid by your grants and it's inside your institution, so it's very well settled, right?
So a little bit of
right.
clarity here. I don't have the grants for paying the software development. Julien Connedat has. So I started the project when I was a PhD and finished my PhD. And actually, I wanted to go out of this software development phase because it was a problem. Like I was a researcher and I didn't want it to do too much of software development. That's where I started a postdoc doing more application. Mm-hmm. And then I wrote grants and then I actually liked it. And so I applied for a tenure track position, and then it led to a position I am now. And so now I'm getting funding for my own research. But during that period, Julien has continued working on maintaining, developing, and maintaining the toolbox and the community, and he got grants for hiring software developers, etc. And he's maintaining the software.
So when you have something like that happening, that is basically your grants that pay for your software development, but the software development is also open to the community and the community volunteering. How do you recognize the contributions coming from these volunteers that are not directly integrated within your grants? And do you have an idea of what is the best way to be fair to both sides on their respective contribution and also about their respective development and careers?
Yeah, I think there is a distinction to do between the two. Software developers usually they maintain the software. They maintain the installation for all the operating system that they are. They fix issues, and usually in a research-based software that is made for research, usually the methods that are behind, you can have some issues, but the issues that are related to the software development software, they're not the same as the issues that you have in the methods that a researcher has developed. And usually you can make the distinction there. And I don't want to speak for the whole team because I've been away for some time and how it works exactly. But you can imagine that software developers will package everything as a software and make sure that it's usable for someone. But then there are issues in the research methods that were implemented and you need to improve them and validating all of these things. That's still research. And when there is something to contribute, that's usually a researcher that does it in that section, and it's relatively easy to separate that from the rest, and also I don't remember the word that you mentioned, to recognize the contribution for these researchers. So it can take many forms, and usually that's research, and usually there's publication when there is an improvement in the software in that section.
Okay, thank you. The second question that we have for you is, as a PI, doing experimental work, it is really difficult to maintain expertise and code over student generations. So when you have a lot of turnovers and, people change because they graduate and they're happy people. Do you have any ideas about how to improve on this situation?
Yeah, go open. Completely go open. It's related to what I I mentioned before, going open means that you have to improve the quality of the software, but also to make documentations about how to use it. And usually you open the code as well, so you put documentation for people to contribute. And that means that you have your own students that are new interns or you graduate students. They want to contribute to the software. And so all the documentation that you made by being open for other people, you actually use that internally. So that helps a lot. So going open forces you a little bit, if you want to do it correctly, to do it as well for your own lab internally. And so it helps a lot. But still, you need people to understand and transfer knowledge as well. So either long-term software developers, PhD students, postdoc, that have been, usually we hire postdoc that have been working for research, that have been working for a long time with the software. They have been doing master and PhD, and then they start a postdoc. I mean, they spent like 6 years on that software, and so they can transfer information and knowledge. So it's all a matter of once a software gets enough traction and attention from other people, there's people in the community that can support the transfer. But it helps also if the PI can use and transfer that knowledge as well. So I would recommend the PI to be well-versed in the software as well.
Stephanie, Cass, do you want to add something from your experience?
So there's a saying that you're your own best collaborator, or like imagine when the scenario comes that you have to go back and look at your tool or your data or something, like you are the person you're writing it for. You in 6 months time, or 2 years time, you haven't looked at it. So one of like my biggest early successes with getting my PI on board was like, I knew we had a big turnover of students in the lab, and I knew at the point that I was writing the software to write good documentation, so I didn't have to keep training them, and I could just go, here, here's the money. And obviously there was some like actual training, but that they very quickly saw the value of that because they didn't lose the knowledge. And then once it's all written for the lab, it's super easy to be like, should we just put this out there in another way? And yeah, it's a very easy. It was a very easy sell for my PI we were creating those materials for within the lab because of this issue of attrition of knowledge. And it's just click the switch to make it public.
Stephanie, do you want to add something to this?
Sure. So first, I'll agree with the points that Cass and Benjamin had made, that definitely I feel like I'm my best collaborator when I'm writing well-documented open code, because I do countless times go back to old stuff and I have to remind myself exactly what I did, and my memory is not great. I think it's hard for me as a postdoc to comment on how to, allocate resources, or how to, manage larger projects, and how to, give credit to people who are contributing outside of the lab. I've only been involved with in-lab projects. So I think I don't really have much to add there. But yeah, just think of yourself as your best collaborator. And I think open science will help just you as an individual, but it will also help everybody who might want to eventually come on board.
I have something to add because I am my worst collaborator. I am not my best collaborator because I just don't spend the time writing good documentation. And it's for you, it's one way around. You write it for yourself and for your team, and then you put it all open. And that's easy, but that's a good thing. For other people's like me, it may be the other way around. I'm a worst collaborator, and so I write code and I don't document it because I don't have the time. I don't feel I don't feel it's the right thing to do because I'm not sure if I'm gonna be using that after. I'm just making an experiment, right? But forcing myself to put it open forced me to add documentation for other people, and then it helps me too.
Basically,
right?
the answer is documentation. So however you can trick yourself into producing it, I think that's fine. And I'm a big documentation nerd, so
that's good. I'm the worst.
Documentation investing, or you hire us. All right, one last.
Yeah, I'd like to Oh,
Sorry.
could I add one last thought
Yeah, sure.
about documentation? A lot of people are really scared about putting their code out there. Maybe it's your first piece of code you've ever written in your whole life, and it's spaghetti code. It's just all over the place. I would encourage you to put it out there because you have no idea whether it might help you in the future. Who knows if you completely mess up that code and your own laptop or your laptop burns down and then you don't have it anymore. But just having like a record of what you did is really great. I would also encourage the community to be, and I think a lot of the community is this way, like very accepting of different levels of, perfection in terms of good code. I think we should encourage everyone to put their code out there, to try to document it as much as they can, just do their best. Like, don't ask for perfection. Try to, do as well as you can. But we should be encouraging open coding practices at every single level.
Fantastic. And thank you very much. There's one last question, and I'm going to open it to the three of you, starting with Steph. Making datasets open access is seen as a disadvantage by my PI because it means losing a very expensive asset that we can use to establish collaborations. What can we do about it? Steph, you can start.
Yeah, so I collected this test retest data set and actually a follow-up test retest as well that I haven't really gotten around to releasing or really finishing processing actually, and I'd like to release a process version. But for the first data set, we released it openly, and I think it's actually drawn a lot of good attention to the work. People have reached out in many different contexts with interest in working with that data, and maybe doing their own kind of replication of some of the work that I did. I would say that it drew quite a good amount of attention to my work. And whenever I work with open data sets, I'm always citing, whatever fundamental paper is associated with the data set, or if it has a DOI or something like that. So I would point that out to your PI. It does, in my experience, it does seem to draw a lot more attention to your work. Let's see. So we were saying, like, what do you say to your PI if they're kind of recalcitrant about that's where I would lead. It kind of draws attention to your work.
Thank you.
You want to go ahead?
So I experienced this quite practically because I work across a number of different groups. And some data sets are really easy to come by, like easy in terms of like getting anyone in a magnet. But some data, like there's a group that I'm working with that are collecting ASL on infants that are like under 4 weeks old.
Okay.
And I'm like, you have put so much effort into collecting this, you hang on to it, right? What I'm working to do is to facilitate the release in a way that they're comfortable with. And maybe this is something that will change over time, like as norms go. But at the moment, what I'm trying to do is make it like advertise that data to someone, but not give it away freely. Give it away allow access to it in a way that the PI is comfortable with. And maybe that is like they want to see an ethics request and they want to ensure authorship and they want to make sure X is cited and X cited. But so I think there's levels. Like I think it's totally valid in the system that we're working in currently to see these things as assets, and they are assets. And there's a sliding scale of what you can do. And it can be useful to make a plan at the beginning to say, okay, well, this data is going to be released after the first paper. And then we know that there's other analysis we want to do, but we can make the data available then and sort of have a plan, and plans change. But I think if you go into it with the intention to share something and in a way that you're comfortable with, then that's still better than nothing.
I completely agree. There are different, like open science is just not one definition, and there are many levels of open science. You can release the data sets, but still to be able to access the data sets, having to send like a formal letter to the author, and that he needs to approve, and maybe that's not completely open because he can refuse everything and say that it's open, but probably he would not go into the effort of going open if he would refuse everything. But actually then he can see how it's going to be used and accept collaboration if he wants. So I think there are different levels, and it all depends of the or if the PI or the person is comfortable or not. I would add maybe another idea. If the PI feels like it's releasing something to the open and losing control, usually data sets, they are complex, like you said, complex to analyze too. And usually when you acquire a data set, you create a lot of methods and analysis methods and software that you can also release separately. And that's maybe something that you can connect, like release a data set that is extremely complex to analyze. That's usually the reality of things, but you also provide tools to facilitate the analysis of these data sets. And these tools are a way also to contribute and collaborate with people. And so making the full package means that you can actually control the way it's going to be used, and also a little bit control who you're going to work with, because you created a tool that is targeting a community as well. So that's an idea of how you can release a data set and being more comfortable about it.
Thank you very much. I think this is all also for this second session of question and answers for our symposium on open science. If you're watching in the HBM, remember that you can check out other crowdcasts and you can check out other events at the Open Science Room. If you're watching this after, remember that you can check a lot of materials on our website and on the HBM On Demand platform. We had 2 questions that we didn't ask that were more related to basically publishing and open publishing and different way to publish, and basically in general the world of writing papers and what does it mean for our careers. We decided not to ask it here because, first of all, it's very deep questions that would go for a very deep topic and deep conversation, but also because there have been 2 other sessions that we refer to you to about. One was an open discussion panel on open publishing, and the other was a table talk about open publishing. You can check those out in the material of the Open Science Room. For the rest, last pool about open science. The Open Science SIG opens their positions for chair-elect, treasurer-elect, secretary-elect, deputy chair for the BrainHack organizer, deputy chair for the Open Science Room organizer, and I think also junior chair for the Open Science Room and junior chair for the BrainHack at the end of this OHBM. It's a lot of positions that you can apply for. So you will receive an email, and if you're interested, check it out and talk with us. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Steph.
Thanks, guys.